Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the webinar tonight. We're going to be discussing recruitment, loans, and pathways. On your right-hand side, we've opened up a poll. Within that, it basically says what phase do you coach within and what do you currently coach in terms of outfield or goalkeeping. It'd be really good for us just to get some feedback on that, just so that we can gear any questions and answers, obviously, around where you're currently coaching and who you're currently coaching. Just to give you a little insight into who is here tonight, we've got Neil Moss, who's an England National Goalkeeping Coach, Adrian Tucker, England National Goalkeeping Coach, and myself, Anthony White, England National Goalkeeping Coach. So just so you're aware, we work across the England pathways, really unique in the sense that we get to work with all of the players, working from under 15s all the way through to the under 20s, as well as working alongside the coach education as well. So a real diverse opportunity to discuss here, an in-depth insight into loans and pathways. So what to expect really from tonight? The first being hopefully an in-depth discussion that I suppose gives you the opportunity to see what we've tried to do in terms of a bit of insight, a bit of research, and then the second being hopefully some useful info that you can use back at your clubs and hopefully with the goalkeepers that you're coaching. There's a really big discussion at the moment around performance versus potential. So obviously when you're coaching your goalkeepers, whether they be at the younger ages or whether they be working at the senior level, we're always striving for something slightly different, whether that be the performance element or the potential element. So sometimes the performance outweighs the potential, and that might be going for the 3 points at the weekend, but having a keen eye on obviously the potential that we might be going after with maybe a younger goalkeeper, or maybe a prospect at the club. Sometimes the potential outweighs the performance, especially in development football. We might be going after key characteristics within a goalkeeper. And I suppose essentially, how can we best develop those goalkeeping traits so that they perform at the top level? So what we'd really like you to do tonight is to think about the loan experiences for your goalkeeper. And within that, it might be, who does this concern? So is this the individual? It might be the goalkeeper, it might be the manager that you're working with, it might be the prospective clubs. What are you actually looking for in a loan? Is it just an experience for the goalkeeper to go out and play senior football? Is it an opportunity for, I suppose, a future call-up to your own first team back at your club? Where might those loans be? Where might those experiences be? We talk about it all the time. There's various different steps within English football. We're really lucky here in England to be able to occupy 6 steps outside of the professional league, which is fantastic for our goalkeepers and even outfield counterparts to go and flourish in senior football. How do we get those loan experiences for your goalkeepers? Really think about that. How do you influence, whether it be the goalkeeper that you're working with that you're sending out on loan, or whether it be the manager and the coaches, that the experience that you're going to send them on is the right experience? And again, that sort of ties into why. Why are we doing it? What is it? Is it the performance element? Is it the potential element? Because it has to be for the player and for the club that you're working with. And then finally, when is the right opportunity to do that? Is the right opportunity, while they're still a scholar, or is it while they're a pro? Is it still in development phases? When is that? And I suppose that's down to you and the clubs that you're working with and the managers that you're working alongside, for you inevitably to work that out yourselves.
Thanks for the introduction there, Ant. Welcome to the webinar, everybody, as well. Just on to the next sort of part. Now, we're all aware of the England DNA in relation to the goalkeeping, and what we thought was we'll just touch base on one or two aspects of that DNA and how that would then, we would see, link into these loans and pathways. So as we just go through now, so there's the DNA for a little reminder for everybody. I'm sure everybody has seen it before and is aware of what it actually means and how it means, but how does it actually link into the loans? So if we look at, for instance, the technical aspect here, if we're talking about being consistent within the loans, I'll just hand over to Mossy now and ask Neil, what's your thoughts on this, Neil, in relation to the technical aspect going into the club?
Yeah, hello everybody. I think the loan system is hugely important for this because I think we all see effective actions in training, and I think we can see effective actions in games, friendlies, and the rest of it. But I think in order to produce top goalkeepers and consistent goalkeepers, I think they need to be able to repeat these actions under massive pressure. And examples of that, obvious ones, defending the area. So are they going to be able to come for that cross in the 90th minute when the result depends on it, when they've got fans watching them, when the manager's under pressure? Are they going to be able to defend the space, or are they going to be able to come out and help their back line? Again, when it's hugely important, when a mistake might see them getting sent off and ultimately costing them a game or a goal. And then defending the goal, can they make those big saves, those huge saves that not only wins games that don't mean anything, but actually wins their team points? So in order to be able to prove that they can consistently do these actions, they have to do them under pressure. And there's no better pressure than actually being out on loan and doing it in first team environments where the result is all important.
Good. Thanks, Neil. Just looking onto one of the other corners there from the psychological point of view. Ant, your thoughts here on the nerve strength?
Yeah, nerve strength. I think it links really nicely to Mossy's point there about, I suppose, working under pressure, dealing with various different situations, whether it be to defend the goal, area or space, or even in possession, that robust inner belief to perform under pressure. So we picked out from a psychological corner there, we could have picked out winner. Obviously, that's really key when the players go out on loan, that they become and feel part of a unit that isn't necessarily their team. But I think the thing that you come away from when you definitely go out on loan is that nerve strength. You are going essentially out on loan to a parent, to a different club that isn't your parent club. You are going to be exposed to different situations where the pressure may be from teammates, the pressure may be from fans, the pressure may be from managers in terms of results. And I suppose those learning experiences, when they take them back to the parent club, are going to stand them in really good stead. And I suppose that's what you can't do at your parent club week in, week out. But a loan should hopefully offer those experiences to the goalkeeper.
Cool. Just moving on then, also then from stay with you, Ant, on this if we can, with the physical aspects. And you alluded to some aspects there, and Moshi spoke about consistency just now. How does the robustness of someone fit into the loan sort of period, and how does that link in?
Yeah, suppose if you think about your parent club, say you're talking about under 18 football, you might have 2 or 3 goalkeepers within the system there, and obviously they get to rotate on a week-by-week basis, so they might play 1 in every 3 games. So the consistency of the physical demands within that game time or game frame is going to be varied. So if you think about it from a kicking point of view, how many opportunities do they get to kick consistently? 30, 35 kicks a game if they're doing it once every 3 games. Once you go out into potentially non-league, or you go on loan to League 1, League 2, there might be a different emphasis in the playing style. And comes that potentially a different element of physical demands. And with that then comes the robustness that's needed for the goalkeeper to withstand. They might be going on half a loan and playing 28 games. They might be going and playing a full season and playing 46 games, whatever that might look like. And I suppose it's us as coaches being adaptable and recognising that the demands physically are going to be different when we send them out on loan. How do we prepare them for that? Can we prepare them for that even? And does the loan necessarily expose them to the different demands within the game? Okay.
I'll just talk about the tactical aspect, and I think one of the important things for sending someone out on loan is actually just getting them to experience the aspect of managing the game a little bit more, and how they might do this. Now, generally, if you're going to go out on loan as a young goalkeeper, you'll probably go out at a higher level. So that'll be a certain new experience to them in actually managing that environment and managing a game at that higher level. And again, going back to what Mossy made the point on consistency, being able to consistently, be able to manage aspects of the game, and that might come down to the different experiences that you put into by going on loan. Some young goalkeepers will go there and they'll be playing for points for the very first time. They might be in a under-18 environment generally where they do play for, I suppose, points in some way, shape or form. But when it goes back to what you spoke about performance over other aspects there and previously, you're probably looking at this as being, a key thing for them by winning points. There might be a case of playing for bonuses and things like that as well at the level, certainly in the lower leagues as well, in the non-league environment, and understanding that you're playing for it in a new club environment, and if you're going into some community clubs and based in community clubs, these are vitally important to them. And some of the players that you might play around, actually, it is a huge part of their living, especially at non-league level. So, being able to manage a game, when they're playing and understanding the importance of the moments in the game, I think is a excellent opportunity to experience when you're in that sort of loan environment and playing on a regular basis. Finally, just to add on to that then as well is the social aspect and connecting to the team. So a number of things I just mentioned there, obviously included in that. But, going out on loan, again, you're probably going out of your comfort zone a little bit because, you've been playing within a team or within an environment for a number of weeks, a number of months, maybe a number of years even. So going out to a new team, connecting, building new relationships as an individual, unit relationships, with your back four, back three, whatever it might be, understanding what it's like to play and train at a new club and a new environment. All important things as an individual to experience yourself, and no doubt a loan experience can bring this into a goalkeeper and support them within their personal DNA as well. I'd like to think you bring out your own personal qualities in that new environment. It's important that they do actually remain unique, as it says in there, within their identity, and hopefully that will support the team. And fundamentally, what individuals go to teams for is actually to improve them, not just to look after themselves, but also to try to improve a team. Most managers that want to sign a young goalkeeper or any sort of goalkeeper on loan would generally do that to certainly improve their squad or enhance what they've got already. So I think that's a general important aspect of connecting with a team from a social side of things as well. So hopefully just covering what we just spoke about there the last 5 or 6 minutes, just gives you a little bit of an idea of linking the DNA, which I'm sure you're all aware of, but really how that might fit into the loan aspect. So I'll just hand over back to Antje.
Cheers, Tux. I think if we look at that DNA, and obviously that's the England DNA that's been put together, we can all do that, whether we're at a club setting or whether we're in a different association, and probably link that to different aspects, whether it be loans, whether it be what you're trying to achieve day to day. I think the key ingredient for me to take on from that, Tux, especially what you just alluded to there, is the definition of a good loan and the definition of a bad loan, and if there is one. You spoke a lot there about the social aspect, you spoke a lot there about the physical aspect, etc. I think that's quite key. Sometimes we go based on performance, and the goalkeeper comes back and they might not have performed particularly well. They might be in a relegated team, etc., etc. But there might be key ingredients that, as a coach, we're going after that might stand them in good stead for their next loan. We're going to send them on this loan because, for me, the nerve strength is going to be really key. So we're going to send them out to this step within the National League system. The next loan, we might be sending them out for a different aspect in order to, I suppose, grow their learning. So I think it's really key points there that you've touched on, Tux. In essence, it's building a platform for a goalkeeper that isn't just technical. It's a whole varied facets of different things that we can help with a goalkeeper. So this next part, we're going to talk around advantages of a loan system. Hopefully it's going to provide you an insight into a little bit of research that us as a goalkeeping department have gone into, really, assessing current and past goalkeepers within the England pathway. Probably gave us a little bit of an insight, would you agree? It gave us a little bit of an eye-opener in terms of what goalkeepers might look like to do with loans in the future. So the first question, and please put it in the chat box, would be, what do these goalkeepers have in common?
Five seconds.
I say just pop them in the chat box. There's no right or wrong answer. If you've got anything, Tux, if you've got an idea, mate, please throw it out there.
We don't want any answers like they're all wearing gloves or things like that. So there is something more to having in common than how they look at the moment. They're all English. That's correct. Yeah, all English. Is that Chris Timmins got one right there? All in relegated teams, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, very interesting one. I suppose the relegation is that bad, good, or indifferent? I suppose it adds on to their opportunity to learn and experience and take it to the next club, which is definitely evident if you look at Aaron over 2 relegations and now succeeding at the top level. So, yeah, you've all guessed it right. Had loan opportunities before their Premier League debut, but in essence, they've all had loan opportunities at various different levels, which is really, really key to the next bit of information that we're going to deliver. So what we've tried to do here is choose these goalkeepers, all from different ages in the pathway, all had different experiences to essentially where they are now or where they've been. The key thing is their age before they made their first Premier League debut. So the average age, and these numbers that are going to pop up are averages. I want to make that really, really clear. The average age of the goalkeepers that you see on the screen at the moment was 23 before they made their first Premier League debut. And there's a range to that. So at the bottom end, you've got Joe Hart at the age of 19. At the top end, would you believe it, Tom Heaton? He was later in his development and he had a lot of game experiences prior to obviously making that top level debut in the Premier League. The second one is around like loans and other clubs. So some of these goalkeepers have obviously had the opportunity to go out on loan and be at a big club and then be sent down into various different systems within the National League and the EFL. Other goalkeepers have had to move around, go to different clubs. Somebody like Nick Pope, as an example, was at a lower league club, then gets sent out on loan at the time, then makes his move to a bigger club. But essentially, within those goalkeepers in there, they've had to have had roughly about 5 loans or other clubs in order to achieve their Premier League debut. And obviously, if we look at the lower end of the spectrum, would be Joe Hart making his move from Shrewsbury to obviously Man City. At the top end, people like Tom Heaton and Nick Pope, who had to make their name in the lower leagues to begin with, or in the EFL, in the Championship level, before they then ended up getting their opportunity in the Premier League. The next stat we're going to give you is quite key, really, and it centres around games. So on average, it's 100 games within these goalkeepers that you see again that they have to play before making their first Premier League debut. Again, that is an average. At the bottom end is 44 with Aaron. And then at the top end will be Sam Johnson with 232. There's no right, there's no wrong pathway in there. But I suppose what you can see is a collective of group of goalkeepers there that have played at the high level, continue to play at the high level. It's not a case of going in and playing at a young age. They're having to make multiple moves within their career, whether it be to go out on loan and sacrifice opportunities back at the parent club, or they're having to move to different clubs to get those opportunities. And then what they're getting at the back of that is a build-up of games, a build-up of experiences, a big library that they can then be exposed to at the top level when they eventually get the chance for their first Premier League debut.
So Aaron, obviously with Ant and Neil on the call tonight, obviously worked with Aaron previously at Bournemouth in his stint there, and obviously from a young age also. So if we're looking at Aaron from an aspect of his loans and what he done, and it was never easy going out on loan, and it's never easy trying to organise goalkeepers to go out on loan, as we probably all know, and I'm sure a number of the guys on the webinar tonight will be mindful to that as well. But if I pose this question to you first, Ant, what main hurdles would you say were there for yourself and Neil in finding a loan move for Aaron initially?
I think it's convincing people. So it's either convincing the club that they're going to go to, convincing the manager back at the parent club. Is it the right move that he needs to go to? Is it the right club at the right time? And again, link it back to the DNA that we spoke about. What are we actually trying to go after within this loan move? There's money involved within a loan move. Somebody at a Premier League level might be getting paid a lot more than somebody playing in the EFL at the time. What are the contributions to that loan? That's quite a big factor at times. The unknown, Aaron's played for the England under-19s and the England under-18s, but he hasn't really played any games other than a couple at Sheffield United. So I think the biggest part is like that convincing factor. It is really, really, really key for us as coaches. Opportunities to showcase things like this, where we've just gone through a few numbers there in terms of pathways. If you're talking about back at a club and you've got a prospect like Aaron, or it may be somebody else within the pathway, it gives an opportunity for people to then go after tangible things. If we go down this pathway, we may get an outcome, we may not. You may, as a manager, give them the opportunity straight away. So it's really interesting to almost like lay out the opportunities to the manager, to the staff, to the parent club, to the foreseeable club, and almost go, these are the opportunities for that goalkeeper. Now it's for us to convince you that that's the right opportunity. And I think they're the main hurdles, almost like that convincing strategy that we have to go through. And we definitely had to go through, myself and Mossy at the time.
Yeah, I believe his first loan move was to Chesterfield, and obviously he spent some time at Chesterfield there. If I ask you, Neil, when he returned from his loan spell, what did you find were the main differences in Aaron himself from his, it could be from on the field and off the field, I suppose, from when he returned from that first loan spell?
Yeah, he had changed dramatically from going away. So he was away for half a season, played about 27, 28 games, I think it was, at Chesterfield. Ended up getting relegated with them. They were already pretty much relegated when he went in January. But as a goalkeeper and as a person, I think that everybody sees Aaron now playing for Arsenal, playing for England, as this supremely confident kid. And he was like that, he won't mind me saying, when he went on loan at Chesterfield at the age of 18. But when he went there, I would say he didn't really understand the seriousness of the job and the downsides. I think although he had struggled to get a club at the age of 15, I think his path from the age of 15, joining Sheffield United up to joining Bournemouth, had been a really good one. He played for England, he'd become a European champion. And so he hadn't really had any negatives at all leading up to that point. So I think when he went to Chesterfield, he learned the difficulties of it all. He became a little bit more humble, a little bit more appreciative maybe of other people around him, in terms of his teammates, in terms of a manager that might be struggling to hold on to his job, in terms of fans who have to spend all of their money to go and watch the games. And he sort of realised how important it was to that it wasn't just about him and him making his decisions for himself and his progress. It was about, obviously, the importance of getting results for his team at that time. And if I can touch then, see the improvement was huge, because then when he sent him to Wimbledon on his next loan, he really ingratiated himself with the whole of the Wimbledon structure, became a real fan of Wimbledon. And as Ant has just said then about sort of becoming a part of the football club he goes on loan to, Aaron certainly did on that second one and became an actual Wimbledon player. And you can see how delighted he was when he helped them to stay up. So when he came back to us from being someone that I didn't think was anywhere near ready playing in the Premier League. He was someone that I felt quite confident after the Wimbledon loan to tell Eddie Howe that I felt at that point in time he was ready to be given his chance in the first team because of the pressures that he had faced on those 2 loans.
Yeah, excellent. Juan has put a message in the chat there, and it's in relation to Aaron, and you may have covered it or touched on it slightly, but he said, how did you convince the manager to allow him to go to 2 struggling teams?
Yeah, good question from Schwan. The first one was quite easy. I think Aaron had come bowling into the club, and again, he won't mind me saying, he'd come bowling into the club, and I think that everyone knew that that's what he needed. He needed to go somewhere. It'd be knocked down a peg or 2, maybe in a harsh way. The second one was quite tough because we felt that, again, Wimbledon being in a relegation trouble, we didn't want Aaron to get relegated twice. But Aaron was really keen to go on loan again. He didn't want to go back to League Two. And to be fair, Wimbledon were probably the only League One club that came in for him. So I just had to say to the manager that, in my opinion, of being around goalkeeping as long as I have been, that this was the best way that we could turn Aaron from being a potential, going back to Ant's original slides, from going back to a potential to someone that could perform. And we were never going to know whether he would be good enough for our first team or be able to handle playing in our first team if we didn't see him at the highest possible levels. And League Two and then League One were the highest levels we could get him at that time.
Yeah. Excellent.
I just go back just one slide. So I think it's really interesting, the comments that are obviously coming in. I suppose the way you're thinking about things at the moment in terms of the comments that I'm reading here at the moment. Does the data confirm on average, whether a goalkeeper improves or not? That's a really difficult one, and it's really tangible, I suppose, or not tangible, I suppose, because we're discussing whether. I presented numbers there, and a player's pathway is I suppose, grown on the parent club, their willingness to loan out, the club that they go to, does he stay in the team? And then I suppose the final caveat to that is, how does the actual player respond to it? All of those 3 combinations in a mixture will then end up being the outcome. So if those 8 to 10 goalkeepers that we showed before, it happened for them, doesn't mean it's going to happen for the next 8 to 10. But it just gives them a different opportunity, a different setting, a different viewpoint that the goalkeepers can experience over a period of time.
And can I just answer Jason Martin's one there? Because I think it's quite a good one. It said, would it be better to send a goalkeeper out on loan to a struggling team so there's more for them to do in games, or with a team that's good and don't allow opposition many chances? And in an ideal world, Jason, I'd say both. Because what you want them to be able to do is go there, make loads of saves, come for loads of crosses, and have loads of big actions, like what I spoke about with consistency. But then the real pressure and the real struggle is for a goalkeeper, as we all know, is being able to make that important save when you've had nothing to do. So ideally, I'd love to be able to send them out on both. But sometimes, a team that's doing well, normally their goalkeeper's probably doing quite well with them. So it's probably harder to do that one, but certainly both.
So the next parts that we're going to discuss in here is essentially the pathway before their first top league debut. So just so you can see from left to right, we've got France, Germany, Spain and England. From the France perspective, there's 8 goalkeepers, Germany 10, Spain 9, and obviously England with 10 there. The numbers that are coming up now is the average numbers, whether it be, in this case, age, that those 8 goalkeepers from France made their first top league debut. So it'd be the age of 20, the age of 19, and the age of 21 in Spain. Compare that to England at 23. And obviously the little numbers below are the age ranges. So somebody in France would have been 19 all the way through to 22. And obviously in England, it's all the way from 19 to 28. If you look at loans and clubs now, the systems obviously in France, Germany and Spain are slightly different. They have B teams. They have if you, in the case of Spain, a segunda. So the systems are slightly different. We're really lucky here in England that we've got so many different steps that the players can go and play at. But it may provide the opportunities in the likes of France, Germany and Spain to play at their respective top levels earlier, because the pathway isn't there for them to go out on loan. So it just offers a different experience. And obviously for us, we do have that opportunity, and therefore you can see with our top level goalkeepers in the country, it's definitely evident they have gone out on loan. And then finally, before they make their first top league debut, you're talking around 56 games in France, 39 games in Germany, and 64 games in Spain. Usually that's for either B teams or second division teams. In Bundesliga, you've got essentially 3 levels of the Bundesliga. So the opportunity for players in Germany to go and play in those different divisions and levels is still there, but it's just a lot less, obviously, than in England. Comparing that again to the 100 that our goalkeepers seem to be averaging at the moment, from 44 with Aaron all the way up to 232 with the likes of Sam. So my questions to you, Tux and Mossy, really here, when I'm looking at that data there, and again, it is only data and it doesn't, I suppose, bring everything to life, but it gives you a snapshot of what's happening in different countries at the moment, is what are the real benefits to a loan? And then I suppose, what are the hurdles? When you do send players out on loan, what are the hurdles or maybe problems that can occur for the player, for the club, etc.?
If I don't mind, Tux, I'll start with some of the hurdles that I found. I think that you have to make sure, I suppose, that your goalkeepers aren't going away and getting told different messages to what you want at your club. Certainly found back in the Bournemouth days, I suppose the hurdles were we were a team that tried to play out from the back, and how much would a goalkeeper lose his ability to play short if he spends 6 months or a year away? Is having that relationship with other goalkeeper coaches, the ones that are now looking after your goalkeeper, to make sure that his education stays strong, particularly, again, if we're talking in the terms of an Aaron Ramsdale or a Mark Travers, who we knew were going to be future potential goalkeepers for us. So it was always trying to balance that, what they're going to learn to going on loan and maybe what they're going to lose to going on loan. And that was always a constant balancing act. And I would certainly took into consideration the goalkeeper coaches that they went to when they went on loan. For example, at Wimbledon, Ashley Bays, I've known for a long time, a really good guy, and we had really good communication between him and obviously Anthony and myself, which meant that became a really positive experience for Aaron throughout, and ended up with a really positive result for the club as well.
Yeah, the positives, some of the positives we've already spoke about, I think, around the DNA aspect, and certainly more exposure to the games. Generally, you're letting people out on loan. It could be from a senior aspect where they haven't been playing games. They could be the number 2 or number 3 goalkeeper at the club who hasn't had any games and had a lot of game time, and it's opportunities for them to go out. And at the same time, it might be a young goalkeeper who really has sort of saturated his under 18 market or his under 23 market, and really needs to kick on and really needs to put into a new environment and test him further. So, as you alluded to, the different stages and the different ladders in the English pyramid system certainly allows goalkeepers to be pitched in at different levels where you might be able to marry them up to where you think they might be, within their current standards. Also, I think, at the same time, a benefit of loaning as well, and we also have to think about this, is that there might be goalkeepers that are not going to make it at your club. So you might be doing them a justice in allowing them to try to get a loan to actually build a CV, to then go on and build a career elsewhere. So it might be a little bit of an exit strategy for individuals that, are not going to reach the Premier League level and might be at the League 2 club and not be given a contract at the end of the season. And it might be your job to try to find a loan for these individuals to to actually support them in going forward, in their career elsewhere.
I think it's an interesting point, Tux, in the sense of convincing goalkeepers as well. So you've got a goalkeeper playing in the EFL at the moment, wants to go out on loan, but wants to go out on loan to the Conference South or the Conference North because it's the next highest opportunity that they can go and play. So I suppose a question to you both, and I don't know if it's an easy one, is how do you convince a goalkeeper that wants to go and play in the Conference North South that actually going maybe a level below or 2 levels below is best for them in order to, I suppose, give longevity within the game to then come back and have a pathway within the club that they're at the time?
Yeah, I think with them now, there's a lot of baggage as well. So you might have an agent, you might have representatives, you might have family members. So, sometimes it's not just about you as a goalkeeper coach and him as a goalkeeper deciding where he goes and what he does. Sometimes you've got to speak to 3 or 4 other people who might have different opinions of where to go and might turn their head one way and might turn their head another way, or tell them this is not right or that's not right. So I think as a goalkeeper coach, along the lines, you have to be as honest as you can with them in where they think they should go and what they should do. But if they choose to listen to other people and make their opinion based on that, that's obviously entirely up to them.
This is where I think that obviously this presentation that you're doing here is excellent, because these guys are our goalkeeper coaches on here, and obviously it's going to be shared on the YouTube channel as well, to see the pathway of the goalkeepers that you've just shown. And you're talking an average of 100 games before they play in a top flight. It just goes to show the benefits of going on loan, and that would be a way to obviously talk any managers or any people who have any doubts. As Tuck said, agents, and that can be good, but they can also be a pain in this situation, and convincing them that they're not going on loan for anything else apart from for the development of the goalkeeper, and whether that be for the parent club or, like Tuck said, that's to showcase them in front of other people. It's always going to be for the benefit of the goalkeeper.
So I suppose what I'm hearing, just to finish off this segment, is real honest conversations, whether it be with the goalkeeper or whether it be with other people within the goalkeeper's lives or the club, and then having real clarity for the goalkeepers so that they understand that there's a pathway. I definitely hear, if I look back at me as a goalkeeper, and I'm sure yourselves as well, like having that clarity day to day that there's a pathway for you at the club, and that as coaches we're providing that pathway. I suppose we'll give that player that little bit of psychological comfort that I'm here for a reason, and that I can achieve something by going and doing these steps that the coaches feel is for my development. So yeah, some really interesting points to take home from that.
One thing I'll just mention there, I think it was Daniel Wells put on the chat there. It does a parent club approach other clubs to discuss a player going out on loan to them, or is it always driven by other clubs approaching you first to discuss taking players on loan? I think, to be honest, I'm right in saying it's really a two-way thing. If you've got, as Mossy just alluded to, then having a good relationship with different goalkeeper coaches at different clubs and managers, assistant managers at other clubs, there's always ways that you could approach them. But there are times where you were actually approached as well to ask, who have you got? Are you interested in letting anybody out on loan? People go watching games, scouts are out there around with all the different age groups now. So in answer to your question on there, Daniel, I think it works both ways there.
Just a final question that I'll just allude on there is Glyn. So hi, Glyn. Obviously working with Charlton at the moment at really good level. So Glyn's just asked there, did we have any challenges as a collective here, as a 3, convincing non-GK staff on the required level to send your goalkeepers out to? I suppose when you sat here as a goalkeeping coach, it's putting it back on the outfield coach, and that might be goalkeeping as a position is seen as quite a risk position, whereas if you take a striker out on loan, it's probably not as much as a risk at the time, or it's not perceived in the football world that it's a potential risk. So if you're placing that onus or that question back onto the outfield counterpart, it would be, okay, we've got X goalkeeper here currently playing in the under-23s. You know, if you were now a manager in the National League system or the Football League system, where would you position him? And I think that way then you place the onus back on the outfield coach, and they can have a real key understanding of what they might do if they were in those positions as an outfield manager or an assistant manager, etc. But also it gives you the opportunity to, I suppose, give a bit more discussion of pathways again, whether it be in a club setting. So I'm giving you here from an international perspective, and I'm sure, Glyn, if we discuss the likes of Charlton will have had a pathway of goalkeepers that have gone through a system, the likes of Nick Pope as an example, and they've had to play at various different degrees within the Football League in order to get their opportunity at the club to then go on. So it's almost like what's been the pathway within our club, within our segment, in order to get goalkeepers through. If there hasn't been a pathway, well, let's start one now. Let's start one now so that we have something in place to go forward. And that might be putting them in the first team straight away. It may be giving them a loan opportunity. But a really good question there, Glyn. And I think it's something that's different for every club and based on, I suppose, the long term, what's gone on before. So just moving on to this now, it's the early exposure to the top level. So if we look at these 4 goalkeepers, all playing at the top level, all have played at the top level, all representing or have represented their respective countries. So let's take this number of 23. So 23 across there, that is the average age, as I spoke about before, of an England goalkeeper making their first team debut within the Premier League. So at the age of 23, what had Hugo Lloris been exposed to? You know, at the age of 23, he played in the French league. Manuel Neuer had played in the Bundesliga. David De Gea had transitioned from La Liga into the EPL. At the age of 23, Jordan Pickford had just started to play in the English Premier League. Next part to that is, what are the game exposure that these goalkeepers have had? So at the age of 23 for Hugo Lloris, played 125 games in the top league. Manuel Neuer, 88 games in the Bundesliga. And then David De Gea, 124 games across La Liga, English Premier League. And in those 3 cases just there with Hugo Lloris, Manuel Neuer and David De Gea, they've also been exposed to Europa League, Champions League. Now, if we look at the goalkeeper here in question with Jordan, you know, he's 23 years old, just started to come into the English Premier League. He's played 31 games. Now, if we look at that, we go, okay, hasn't been exposed to the top level as much as the other goalkeepers have. However, the loan system that we have in this country and the opportunity with the system that we have has really given Jordan that opportunity to then play in the Premier League. You know, at the age of, he was 22 Tux when he made his debut.
Yeah.
22 when he made his debut. And then obviously by that average age of 23, he's made 31 appearances. So I think it's really key when you look at this here to take the massive positive out of it is the fact that he played so many games out on loan prior and now goes into the Premier League and is able to sustain an entire season, if not more, in the Premier League with obviously Sunderland at the time. So for me, although the other goalkeepers had a higher level and early exposure to the top level and obviously continued, the exposure for Jordan on loan was really key in order for him to then play in the Premier League. At that young age, it really is a young age and amass that amount of caps. Tux, anything you want to add there, really?
No, like you say, it is, you know, the show, you know, you got really good goalkeepers there, you know, the top ones in the world in the Lloris and Neuers, etc., World Cup winners, etc. there. And it's obviously a difference of 30 or 40 or 50 appearances up to sort of 70, 80 appearances is a big difference, as you can see there. So yeah, it's an interesting stat what you show there, and
So you asked me a question, Tux. I'll throw it back at you. So obviously, with Aaron going on loan, had a couple of loans with me, and I think I'm right in saying that Jordan was out on loan at Bradford when you first took the Sunderland job, and then so him being out on loan and coming back, how did you keep him happy while still trying to push him down the pathway once he got to you?
Yeah, I joined Sunderland in the March, and Jordan was out on loan at the time at Bradford, as you said. Obviously, Dick Advocat was the manager through the summer period, and I think one of the questions there that Glyn asked earlier about who you're trying to convince about loans and things. Well, obviously, he had been out on loan, was doing really well in League One at the time with Bradford. Bradford were keen to keep him. I'd had a phone call through the summer from Alan Kelly, who was the goalkeeper coach at the time at Preston, about Jordan and interested in him, what was going to happen to him, etc. And obviously, I needed to get an understanding what the club wanted from Jordan and what Jordan wanted also. And he was obviously a young goalkeeper at the time as well. So I remember actually when you talk about, again, going back to Glyn's question there, having then to convince a chief executive what was right, what was wrong. Should he stay? Should he not stay? We think he should stay at 3. I obviously built a relationship with Pruds at the time there, who was a key development individual to Jordan throughout his career at the early ages. And speaking to him, and he said, if he comes back, he ain't going to be happy. He's not going to be happy being number 3. And the more I got to know Jordan, it was obvious to me that, that was going to be the case, that he wasn't going to be happy because he had such a belief that he was better than the 2 goalkeepers we had in the building at the time. Unfortunately for Jordan, when we had Dick Advocat, who was a vastly experienced manager, he wasn't too keen in playing a young goalkeeper or having a young goalkeeper there. He wanted to rely on 2 experienced generally 2 experienced goalkeepers that we had in the building at the time. That Preston move became a little bit more apparent for Jordan to take on board, and I virtually sold it to him in that he had done the conference, he had done League 2, he had done League 1, and there was a big gap still between League 1 and the Premier League. And rather than him coming back and sitting and being number 3 and being frustrated and not getting picked at the time, coming back to Sunderland, I thought it would be an ideal opportunity to go to Preston, under a good goalkeeper coach in Kells. And I knew we could monitor his development and see whether he could actually tick that box then at Preston. And for those of you that can remember, he had the first half of the season at Preston and was different class in the Championship, and that actually told me as a goalkeeper coach that he could do it and he could step in if required. And in that period of time he was at Preston, the manager changed. Dick Advocat left and Sam Allardyce came in, and on a couple of midweek games, myself and Sam went down to Preston and watched Jordan, and he certainly impressed Sam in his games down there. And the conversation I was then having with Sam and the chief exec was, we need to get this kid back in the turn of the year and give him an opportunity. And as we said, that's what he did. He came back, played it in the FA Cup game, 3rd round down at Arsenal, which was his debut. And the following week then he played at Tottenham away.
Good. I'll just ask for a question here. Alexander, I'm sorry if I don't pronounce your second name quite right, Marzalek. What do you rate as more important for under-23s GK? Spend a season-long loan 2 divisions below, or train with and learn from experienced goalkeepers in the club? And I'll answer exactly the same as the last one. I think a mixture of both, and it also depend on which experienced goalkeepers you have at the club. If they can pass on any of their knowledge, if they're willing to pass on their knowledge, then that can be a really good learning period for them. I was fortunate that I worked with Asmir Begovic and Artur Boruc. And I think if you asked Aaron, I think he would say that he learned a lot off them. So we did sort of have time with him back at the club. So again, it would be a good mix of both if you can possibly do it.
So the 3rd segment tonight, I hope it's going to be really useful, whether it be a goalkeeping coach or outfield coach, or maybe even a club secretary that's listening tonight. And it's around providing opportunity and assessing possible hurdles. What we're hopefully going to do here is give you a little bit of an overview of rules that are currently in place with regards to loans and where you might be able to send your goalkeepers and where you might not, because definitely from a club point of view, it is a minefield at times. As a goalkeeping coach, even as outfield coaches, you sometimes don't know, and there's a lot of grey areas within different things. I suppose what I want to make really clear here is we don't know all of the answers to this because of COVID has had big implications in terms of different leagues and I suppose the caveats to loaning different players out. And also leagues have different rules when it comes to the board. So when it comes down to these that we're going to provide and hopefully give you a brief overview, it essentially comes down to each individual case, but hopefully this will provide a little bit of clarity for you. So what we're going to touch on here is 4 different types of loans: standard loans, short-term loans, youth loans, and then a work experience loan. Right before we start this, I think it's really clear just to, I suppose, itemize the football pyramid here. So you've obviously got the Premier League, Championship, League 1, League 2, and then National League system. And then it moves from there into the National League system where, as you said there, there's over 900 clubs. Within those 900, obviously, clubs, it's from step 1 all the way through to step 6. So if we talk about NLS, which is National League system, just have an understanding that steps 1, 2, 3, and 4 is National League North and South, and then obviously you've got your Premier Leagues, and then you've got your regional divisions, and then steps 5 and 6 are now 16 and 17 different divisions holding different clubs. So hopefully that'll give you a brief overview. When this goes back to a YouTube channel later, you can definitely forward and rewind so that you get a clearer picture. So the first one we're going to talk about is standard loans, and this centres around contracted senior players. It's from window to window. That's really, really key. And it's down as far as step 4. So that's the Northern Premier, Southern League, the Isthmian Premier League. So the Evo stick, really. And they can continue to play non-first team football for their parent club. So a prime example for this would be Dean Henderson. He moves from Manchester United to Sheffield United and obviously Shrewsbury as well. So he's playing first team football there. He makes his move in the first window. So the summer window all the way through to January. He cannot go back to the club, or he can't be recalled from the club. But what he can do is he can continue to play non-first team football for his parent club. So if he wants to go back and play 18s or 23s football, as long as he is eligible to do that, he can certainly do that.
Okay, from a short-term loans aspect, contracted senior players, and we're talking here from the EFL and the Football League, the National League, sorry. Only steps 1 to 4 can register a goalkeeper on a short term. Okay, so we're only looking at these steps in the National League and down. Only the EFL and the National League size can send players can send players on a short-term loan. Okay, so it doesn't involve the Premier League clubs in this case. So they're the only ones that can send players on a short-term loan. And something to be aware of there, if you're doing that it has to be for a minimum of 28 days. So there's no recall on these short-term loans before this 28-day period. So that's something to be mindful of if you are sending goalkeepers out on loan and you want them to get a few games. You have to be aware that has to be to the minimum of 28 days. So a little example there, you might have a third choice goalkeeper at your club under a full contract. You can go to, from a Championship club to a National League South club, but the duration has to be for the 28 days or near enough 1 month there.
So the next one looks at a youth loan. So this is under 21 contracted players. Only steps 1 to 4 can register a goalkeeper on a youth loan. Only the EFL and National League system can release players on a youth loan. Can bring back the goalkeeper at any time and can continue to play non-first team football for parent club. So a prime example for this, to make it really clear, is an under 21 contracted player at Plymouth. Essentially can move to Torquay United on a youth loan. So they're going from an EFL club to a National League club.
And the final one we look to cover then is the work experience. So this could apply to some of you guys that are in the system for the scholars and utilize the scholars to be aware of. So all leagues. So we're talking about from the Premier League down to step 6. So you might have a goalkeeper there at Chelsea, as a picture relates to there. Okay, but can only play in a non-first team football environment. Okay, so he couldn't go. Can only play in a non-football first team football environment in the English Premier League and EFL. So he can only go and play for an under 23 team or under 18 team. They can't go and obviously play for the senior team. Can continue to play non-first team football for the parent club, so he can still come back and forth. So he can still relate into games. So if he goes up to the loan club and doesn't get enough games, or there's a gap in the fixture program, he could always come back and continue playing non-first team football for his parent club. I think that's the key points for them.
So I think what's key there, Tux, for any of you working in the youth system here, the work experience here. So if you've got a scholar and under 18 and say as an example, they move from Premier League to Premier League club, they can only operate in that non-first team football environment. So they can only go and play for non-first team. However, if you send the scholar, anywhere, I suppose, other than the EFL, so the National League system, they can play for the first team at those respective clubs. So you send somebody from a Premier League club into a National League system club, steps 1 all the way through to 6, they can obviously play for the first team at that club that you're sending them to. If anybody is really unsure on anything, obviously this is going to go on YouTube, and you'll be able to go forward and backwards at any time. So I suppose that's been an hour there of us having a discussion about loan experiences for your goalkeeper. Hopefully it's provided a little bit of clarity on the above, the who, what, where, when, why and how. And maybe you first came in scratching your heads a little bit like that, as I'm sure we've definitely done as club coaches back in the environment, going, what can we do? Where am I going to send them? What do they need? When do they need it? How am I going to get them now? And why am I actually doing this? So I'm hoping by now, I'm not saying you're going to be experts, but we're giving you a little bit of clarity over that last 60 minutes of the webinar. So hopefully be a bit more insightful into loans, why we might be doing it, and hopefully how to do that in the future. Tux, Mossy, anything from you to close off?
No, just for me, as I said, I wish someone had put this webinar on 10, 11 years ago when I first started, 12 years ago when I first started doing first team, because it can be a bit of a minefield. Looking at the 4 you did there, if you're coaching the under 18s, under 19s, there were instances at Bournemouth where Anthony and myself kept the youth team and gave them a third-year scholar so that we could send them out on youth loans. So the thing that I found for those of you that are, let's say, doing the under 18s, you can make massive use of those youth loans. You can just send them off, bring them back the next day. They can play in the youth cup games or play with your team on a Saturday and then go off and just cover teams locally. So it's getting that relationship with local sides, because to get under 18s is tough, and to get them on loan is tough. But managers who are desperate in a local non-league, with an injury that's happened on a Saturday and they've got a game on a Tuesday, that is a great way to get out there and get your young goalkeepers some games, because then go out for 1 game, 2 games, and you can just call them back. So the youth loan is a massive, massive resource to be able to get your young goalkeepers out on loan.
Yeah, I think you've alluded to, and it is a lot of information in the different areas that you can go, and some of these rules do change every season, so you have to try to stay on top of them as much as you can. And as club secretaries, as you said, is the first port of call, I would guess, as you probably mentioned. So yeah, there's so much information, but if you can sort of stay on top of it, it can certainly benefit yourselves back at the clubs with the goalkeepers you've got. And as you're going on the last slide, try to relate them questions to all the goalkeepers you've got back at your clubs. And if there's an opportunity there, you need to think who it is, what they do, where they go, when they go, why they go, and how they do it. So if you do that, you'll hopefully find them a positive loan experience for them out there.
Well, thank you all for attending. I think the biggest thing for me to now explain to you guys is the role of the goalkeeping coach isn't just to coach on the grass, it's to understand everything that goes into the player's development. So if you can obviously watch these 60 minutes back, if you get the opportunity and really divulge the information, then it's going to be really key for your own learning, not just the goalkeepers that you're working with. I understand it's been a lot of information over the last 60 minutes, so I'm sure you might look at the various different slides over and over again. Thank you all for attending. And
can I just say, Ant, before you wrap up, while the guys are just putting their thank yous in the comments, and it's much appreciated for the comments you make. If there are anything that you'd like to talk about in the future, that you'd like to discuss further, by all means, just drop them into the messages there, and we'll do our utmost to try to get around to different aspects of the game. We do have another webinar planned in May, I think, on the role of the assistant goalkeeping coach as well. So hopefully we can get someone involved in that as well to talk about that new role out there at the moment, which is just sort of coming into play in the last sort of 12 to 18 months. So it'd be great to get them guys on board as well. So thanks again for the evening for everybody as well.